You want to be a researcher? Well, being a researcher today is a bit of a dichotomy. The good news is that there is plenty of information available. There are a lot of platforms online where you can find a lot of information from paper, resources, data, anything you want, from Google, from Science Direct, and many other platforms. On the other hand, the competition is increasing year after year. More and more researchers are into the game and they want to win those grants in order to support their research. So the researchers are increasing, the grants are increasing, whereas the funding is decreasing. The funding is also increasing because of the dilution that is happening at the moment in different institutions, that they support different trends. So they are funding specific causes and specific kind of themes. So because of that, the competition is much higher, the success rate is much lower. So bear in mind that before you actually become a researcher. Okay, so the big dilemma is whether you will choose industry or academia. There's a number of things that you should know about the differences of industry and academia, which we'll discuss briefly in this video. The main difference is the years to achieve the desired level of work that you want. And that also is attributed very much with your salary. Usually in the industry, you can make a promotion every 2 to 3 years. And after 2 to 3 promotions, you are a bit of a senior person. And of course, as the years go by, maybe in 5 to 10 years from that point, you will be one of the leaders of the company. On the other hand, in academia is much slower. If you are a researcher at the beginning and you're working in different projects, then you will be changing project from a postdoc to postdoc. So you will be for a postdoc project, for a fellowship for a couple of years, and then move to another university for doing another postdoc position for another 2 to 3 years. But once you get into academia, so you are full academic as a lecturer or senior lecturer, reader, or as a professor, they move, or promotion from one level to the other is usually a bit slower. So there are people who actually moved from lecturer all the way to professor in 7-8 years, especially those that they had before a long term, maybe 5 or more years as a postdoc, so they had already developed their research portfolio, and then they moved a bit faster. But usually it takes more than 10 years or even 15, it can be even much longer than that, to start from a lectureship all the way to the professorial role. So the time plan is quite different, and you should have that in mind when you start deciding whether you should move to academia or to the industry. Another difference, one of the main differences between the academia and the industry, is the flexibility. So when you are in the industry, you can move from job to job, from role to role, even within the company, quite easily. So sometimes there's also this so-called rounded scheme where you're moving around from different teams in order to gain more experience and exposure, so you know more holistically what the company does. And equally, you can move on to a different company every couple of years and getting promoted as well. So what the new employer is asking is specific set of skills. As long as you have these set of skills and you meet the criteria, you are eligible to actually go to a new company. However, in academia, it doesn't work like this. In academia, there are specific roles, specific positions. So you should find the position, the role that is very much into what you're doing. So everything becomes much narrower. You are the expert on a particular area, and you should find a job at the university which is in this area. The result of that is that there are much fewer positions out there that you can compete for. Now, the other thing is the promotions. I'm not the expert to tell you exactly how the promotions are done within the companies, but I know from colleagues and friends of mine that in order to get promoted, usually you go through assessments, annual assessments, and then if you have delivered, if you have met the numbers, then you're more likely to get promoted to the next stage. You may also need to go through like a test or a bit of a competition. When you are getting promoted in academia is a completely different thing. So usually we have a long form that we have to complete, you have to submit it, the application goes through a panel, internal or external, depending on what kind of level you are trying to get promoted to. On some occasions they're asking for references from externally, from outside the university, even outside the country, from people who are experts in the specific area that you're working on. And after all that material is gathered, you go through an interview and you may get promoted. So it is a much more lengthy process in order to get promoted when you're working in the academia. The other thing is the nature of the work. So usually when you work in the industry, you work at the beginning, you are supervised by some others, and as you get older and more senior, you are the leader of some subgroups and then the leader of the groups. So more and more people actually working with you on a daily basis. On the other hand, being an academic, especially an academic, not a researcher who's working as a member of a group, it's kind of a sole work. So you start by yourself, you have to develop your own portfolio, your own research interests, you have to apply for funding. If you get the funding, you may be also having a few postdocs or PhD students to support your work, and slowly you start growing that group. Despite the fact that as you get more funded, you have a bigger group and a number of researchers working with you, you feel that you are still alone in the way that you are putting grants by yourself and you are getting the directions in your group yourself, so you have full responsibility of what you're doing and you are the one who's leading the whole group, unless there are more professors who are sharing the same group. But usually I'm talking about your own research portfolio, not the one that you share with other academics within the same school. So there is a corresponding table which you can see what is the equivalent of the lecturer to the industry job, what is the equivalent of the senior lecturer or otherwise called assistant professor, and also the associate professor and then the full professor. I should say that these are the academic positions that we have, from a lecturer to all the way to professor. There are also some other leadership positions such as associate dean, dean, head of schools, etc., which are gained by experience and of course seniority. So one of the things that perhaps is good to do before you actually decide whether you should go to academia or the industry is to think about the career that you want to pursue in time slots of 5 years. So where do you want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, and then work backwards to see exactly what steps you need to do in order to achieve that. There is always more than one ways to achieve something. So giving an example, you may want to become a professor and yet you don't want to work for the university now as we speak, after you've completed your PhD. It's still possible. So there are ways which may be not the mainstream, but yet you can achieve what you want through that route. So I advise you to see everything more holistically and to see all the options that are on the table. Now, let's go through some advices that I need to give you for when you're still a student in order to start thinking about what you want to do in the future and not really at the very end of your final year or your master's degree. Number one thing is register to institutions. I know that I've said that to my previous videos. It is extremely important to register in your professional institutions of the course that you're taking. Not only going through the news and attending some nice seminars and webinars, but also getting a mentor through these institutions was quite helpful. So having someone to speak and explain to you what are the options that you've got after you've graduated. Along with that, it's very helpful to read articles, especially articles that they're talking about jobs, they're talking about what are the future trends, where the industry is going, where the market is going. So all these things together will make you feel a bit more confident for the decision that you're taking to follow. Another good advice is to talk to your careers office and employability office if you have at the university. They are extremely helpful. They can give you plenty of information about the options that you have once you graduate. Usually the careers office is the central office at the entire university where they give you more general information, and the employability office is the office within your school or faculty. It may give you more specific information about your course and the jobs that you can follow afterwards. And I have one last advice. So while you are at the university, you should take a placement. Summer placements are quite good, where you spend about 8 to 10 weeks in a company, so you get to know a few more people, you get to know the environment of the company, and maybe you help on something. But I'd rather choose a year placement. So the year placements are fantastic opportunities for students to make a little break from the university while they're working in the company, earning a bit of money, but at the same time they understand what they want to do and what they don't want to do. So it doesn't come as a surprise, people who worked in the company and they actually did very well, when they come to the university, they redirect a little bit their studies. They have a better idea for the company that they want to work for, or some others they decide to pursue with research studies. So going to a year, 12-month placement during your studies, between the second and the third year, or the third and the fourth year, is a very useful opportunity that you have. It's a golden ticket, I would say, that you have while you're studying to decide what you will be doing next. At the end of the day, you're not stuck in that company because you're only going for a year. Everybody knows that. So you can leave after and you can decide what you want to do. And it's much better doing that early as being a student, than doing it later on when you actually got your first graduate job. So I hope that information was useful. If you find it useful, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the like button. If you have any comments, any questions, feel free to write them down. And until next time, see you.